The price of gold has surged astronomically in the last 6 months. I'll give you an example. In April this year, in India, it was priced at 80,000 rupees per thola, which is how we measure it, 10 grams. In October, it was 1.3 lakh rupees for that same thola. And that's a rise of 60% in half a year. And in that half a year, it hit 48 all-time highs. If we look back though, the last 5 years, gold in India has climbed from 38,000 rupees, where it was per thola in 2020, in 5 years to 1.3 lakh rupees for that same thola. Even internationally, it's up 50% since January in this year alone. So the question that everybody's asking this time is, first of all, are these prices for real? What the hell is going on? Is it going to continue to run up like this? Should we be buying gold at this point or waiting for some sort of massive correction if there's one coming? So we're going to do that on this video. We'll analyze all of the information that we have and we'll try to understand what is going on with gold. So remember, like, share, subscribe, share this video with anyone you think likes gold. All right, I know, which is everybody's mom, right? And this is why it is. So I wanted to take a minute to sort of talk about India's sort of cultural romance with gold. It's emotional for us, it's economic, it's financial, and it's romantic. Everything from weddings to Diwali, it's about jewelry, it's about security. It's such a crisscross of emotions. It takes some time to actually unpack it. For me, effectively, when I look at gold, it's cultural and it's patriarchal, because culturally, it's multi-generational wealth. Now, if you think about it, you go back to your grandmothers or your great-grandmothers, India was not a very well-banked country. Not everybody had access to banking or savings accounts or methods of saving their money in not hard cash. Gold came in handy because it was traditional, it had value, you had access to small amounts of it. You didn't have to buy the whole lot, you could buy small amounts of it. And so we had our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers would go to the local jeweler and have small amounts of jewelry actually made. This was also multi-generational wealth that they could easily pass on to their children and their grandchildren, especially, like I said, for an unbanked population or for a population that was moving from one part of the country to the other part of the country or even overseas. Now, patriarchal, because for women, while banking did come in, or while cash did come in, women didn't have access to it. This was Sridhan that they had access to from their mothers and their grandmothers. It was handed down to them while they got married. They handed it down one generation further. Parents gave it to their daughters as sort of a hedge so that they would always have something in their hands in case they needed to. And fundamentally also, remember, India still bears scars of partition. In partition, we've heard those stories of families that had to only wrap up the gold they had in a little bundle and run with it because that was the only wealth that they could actually hold and run. Whereas they left their homes behind, they left their lands behind, they left everything else behind, but the gold they could carry with them. So there are so many crisscrossing emotions that Indians have when it comes to gold. The fact that it is you don't need access to a bank, you don't need access to a banker, you don't need access to KYC if you're buying small amounts of gold. It's emotional and it's something you can feel and touch and lock up, right? So we have a long romantic history with gold, which is why we have so much of it. But let's take a minute to figure out how much gold we have, right? So there is a number, and this is called the above ground amount of gold, which is, so if you put together all the gold that was ever mined at all across the world and put it all together, we have about 2.16 lakh tons of gold. So a little over 2 lakh tons of gold. It sounds like a lot, but if you were to melt it all down into one block, and I just did this because the visual is so fantastic. If you were to melt it down into one block, it's a cube about 22 meters on each side. And I was trying to find a real world example of what that is, and that real world example is that it can fit into the door of the Gateway of India. If you've ever been to the Gateway of India, that is what all the gold in the world is worth, right? And this is gold that's used in various things. So most of it, about close to half of it, is used for jewelry, for necklaces, for earrings, for that sort of thing. Some portion of it is actually used for industrial uses, and a large portion of it is locked up by countries, governments and treasuries. So if we look at who has the most amount of gold? The United States actually holds the largest official reserve of gold. It holds 8,100 tons of gold in Fort Knox. Then is Germany, then Italy, France, Russia, China. They have between 3,500 to 2,000 tons of gold. India ranks 8. We have about 800 tons of gold in our RBI reserves. But that's not counting privately held gold that is locked up by families in their households, and of course a large chunk of Indian gold is in temples, in those temple lockers as well. If you count household gold and temple gold, India easily surpasses any other country in the world. Now this is a data point that's used a lot, which says that Indian women hold 24,000 tons of gold. It means that Indian families hold 24,000 tons of gold. I mean, if women alone had that kind of money, it would be a very different country that we're living in right now. So about 11% of all the gold in the world is locked up in Indian household savings. That's what that means. According to the World Gold Council, India accounts for 26% of the global gold jewelry demand. Jewelry actually, is about 24%. It's gone up to 32% in the last 5 years, is the amount of gold that we use. Now, India spent, and this is the big one, right, for Diwali that just went past, India spent between 8 and 11 trillion rupees on gold. We bought up 40 tons of gold in just 5 days. So even though we were looking at record prices, it did not stop demand because people had the money, they wanted to buy, they wanted to take advantage of that auspicious feeling, which means that there is a sentiment of buoyancy in the country, especially among the rich. There was a lot of money, they wanted to spend that money, and they spent the money on gold. So the question that everybody is asking now that the auspicious season is over and the prices have corrected a little bit, they're asking, are these prices going to stay here at this completely astronomical, we've never seen it before, 1.3-ish lakh rupees, or is it likely to come down? Because you don't want to buy now and then have the price crash, or you're waiting saying, if it's going to come down, I'll wait and buy it later. Let's take a look at the factors that actually, influence the price of gold. One, global tensions. So as you know, investors normally invest in stocks or they invest in government bonds. But when there is uncertainty in the world, so for example, Ukraine and the Middle East, so when Russia and Ukraine disrupted energy markets, when they were driving inflation globally, the Middle East conflict, so there was an escalation between Iran and Israel this year. What happens then is fear rises and a lot of investors come out of stocks and government bonds and they buy gold instead because it tends to be a hedge to how the market is moving, and that resulted in prices going up. Secondly, trade wars. This was really a year when Donald Trump kept announcing tariffs over tariffs for every country, specifically China. So when he went up against China and there seemed to be a sort of fight brewing between the US and China, it made investors nervous. Also, China restricted exports of rare earth minerals. It worsened supply shortages as well on energy, and that again made investors nervous. They pulled their money out of stocks and went back into gold, and that resulted in the price of gold actually moving upwards. There's also the other thing. Remember, because Donald Trump has been playing sort of hardball with all of his allies and with his trade partners, the world is losing faith in the dollar. People don't want to, or countries don't want to use the dollar as the base currency anymore, and people are diversifying away from the US dollar and moving into gold because that is the next best alternative. So China, Russia, Turkey, even India are reducing their exposure to the dollar because of US sanctions, because of financial weaponizing. So basically the fact that they're using trade as a weapon is not in good faith. And since the dollar is the base currency for the world, people are saying, you know what? Don't want to use the dollar anymore. We're going to use gold instead. So more and more countries are sort of stacking up on gold. And there is rising global inflation, there's global debt. Gold strengthens your foreign exchange reserves. So normally you can keep your foreign exchange reserves either in dollars or in gold because that is universal across the world. So more and more countries are keeping their foreign exchange reserves in gold. Now, the Chinese central bank added 39 tons of gold this year. The Indian Reserve Bank added to its already 880 tons, it added some more gold as well. So these are the main things that are affecting the price of gold this year: war, trade, inflation, reverse diversification. So it's sort of a perfect storm that caused a bull run for gold and saw the gold prices run up. Now, here's the next question. In that case, will the prices continue to stay up? Now, I want to remind you here that while India has the largest demand for gold in the world, we don't have any gold mines of our own. We had KGF in Karnataka when I was growing up, but that's almost, I mean, it's barely a patch anymore. We import most of our gold from Switzerland, UAE, South Africa. That means we pay in dollars. That means that it affects the rupee, it affects our currency as well. So on an average, when inflation in India starts to hurt, when the rupee weakens, then gold prices go up as well, because people use it as a hedge against inflation. So we know all of these things. Now, what is going to happen to the gold price going forward? We've seen the prices come down marginally after October 27th. One, because the festive season was over, so that demand was gone. Also, because they seemed slight optimism over the possibility that US and China might actually cut a trade deal, and that would have made investors less sort of nervous. And that's why we saw gold correct a little bit. Also, what happens is when any security or any investment runs up so much, a lot of people immediately sell and take money off the table because they've made a profit, so they want to take that money back. So that also causes some sort of price recovery that happens. But is it going to cut again in the future? This is what we know. On the short term, we might see small dips, but on the medium term, generally experts feel that it's not going to come down much further from here. Central banks are unlikely to slow their record of buying because Donald Trump remains, continues to have the tone that he does. All of the things that I named as causing the price of gold to rise up are not changing, right? These are not small things. They're going to continue to stay that way. They're not short-term trends. They're sort of structural shifts. So central banks will continue to buy. The Indian rupee has weakened. Global inflation is still bad. So it seems like gold is going to continue to stay where it is. But what commodity strategists tell us as investors is that gold is a good hedge against your stocks, your real estate, and your bonds. It should not be your only investment, because while it is going up, there's no guarantee that it will stay up or it will continue to go up like this in the future. But fundamentally, like I said, that is a investment strategist point of view. If you ask your moms and your grandmoms, they'll tell you that, hey, when I bought it, it was like hardly worth anything, and now look at where it is right now. You should only remember, and this is the important thing, that the value of gold is multi-generational. It tends to take like 10, 15, 20 years to actually show you that value. Also, you very rarely go out and sell emotional gold, right? The family jewelry is the last thing that you tend to touch. You only touch it in case of absolute emergency. And then there's always the fear of, it getting stolen or you having to pay to keep it in a bank locker. So there's a lot of complex costs around gold as well. There's making charges, the tax that you have to pay. So yes, it's a good hedge. It doesn't seem like it's going to come down from where it is right now. If you're really keen on going out and actually buying gold, it might make sense to keep an eye on those prices and decide whether or not if you see a cut. If you see it come down on one particular day, go out immediately and make your purchase. Here's another sort of extra bonus piece of information. How is the price of gold set in India? So there's something called the Indian Bullion Jewelers Association, the IBJA. So the IBJA apparently every day calls the country's 10 largest dealers for gold and takes their buy and sell quotes. Then the average of these numbers is adjusted for the dollar, the rupee dollar exchange rate plus import duty plus GST, and the official rate of the day is set. Then they use the global benchmark of the London Bullion Market Association for a price base. So that's how the price is set every day. So you can check online what the price is for the day, and if you see a cut, maybe go out and buy if you really want to buy. But remember to sort of keep a mixed bag of investments in your portfolio at all times. If you have an opinion about gold or you have a take, then give it to me in the comment section, because we can always learn from each other, especially if you're someone who's an experienced investor. I'd love to know what you think about gold.